Does this election really matter? There are some people who would say that the problems are so big between the budget, between Europe, between terrorism. No matter who's president, it's just going to be how they react to the situation. There's only so much one person can do. But let's talk about another time. I think there are at least three things that are really important in this election, and you need to think about them because each of these two candidates and each of these two parties have a different approach on these three matters. First is regulatory enforcement. In the Bush era, people would say that you were innocent even once you were guilty, and now in this world, you're guilty until proven innocent. I have not found anybody that's impacted by the regulatory world that hasn't gone through this transformation in their relationship with the government, and not a good one. In almost every situation, the sense is if you're in business, you're wrong unless you can prove otherwise. We've never had that before. We've never had that with Democratic administrations. We certainly have never had it with Republican administrations. So it's a big change. So if you believe that in general business is bad and that we need far more regulation to protect us, it's a pretty clear direction you have to go. We're already moving in that direction. If you think that that control has been abused, then you need to go in the other direction. And that doesn't really matter what happens in Congress. That's a presidential. And the president himself doesn't pick specifically how the things are enforced, but they set a tone. So that tone at the top is going to be very, very important in the regulatory matter. That's number one. Number two, by all estimates, the House is going to stay Republican, the Senate's going to stay Democrat. That's a good thing because if they are of different parties, the chances of runaway legislation in either direction is good. I used to be a legislator up in Pennsylvania. I've learned that when the legislature is in session, nobody is safe. So I like the split. I don't care which way it's split, but I like the split of the parties. Well, again, who's the leader? Having somebody who can kind of pull from the middle of both parties to some compromise, which we haven't seen much in the last few years, really. We haven't seen it for a long time. That's important. Which of the two might be a little bit better in getting some compromise in the middle on some things that we really do need to get done to help the government? And you've seen Obama was able to get a lot of things done with a pure Democrat. Congress has not done well with a split. It's going to be a split Congress, no matter which one's elected. Who's going to be better able to do that? Number three, state versus federal. And this is kind of, you know, a lot of people get kind of obtuse on this, but think about some of the things that we now do on the federal level that we never did 200 years ago, 100 years ago, and 50 years ago. Education world. Are we better off with some consistent policy on everything we do across the country so the states really don't matter that much? Or are there distinctions between being up in Vermont or in Texas or over in Idaho? I personally believe there are, and there are certain decisions that are much better made on a local basis. But again, you have very clear distinction. That's probably one of the first elections in my lifetime where it wasn't just personality versus personality. There are truly differences in philosophy. So does this election matter? Absolutely. And right now, 45% is very clear on one side, 45% is very clear on the other. There's 10 in the middle, of which it's probably only 5, that unfortunately are going to make their decision based on what they eat that morning, whether they have indigestion. Is that sad? Yeah. But those of us who are still trying to think which way we're going to go, and I fit in this group, we can still make a decision. These are important decisions. So yes, this election does matter a lot. Thank you.